It is your Classic Metal Show right here on the ClassicMetalShow.com. And that, of course, was Destruction with a live version of The Butcher Strikes Back. That, of course, from the brand new release, Born to Thrash, live in Germany. And on the line right now to speak about that release and all that is going on in the world of Destruction is the vocalist and the bassist. It is the legend, the mighty Schmier himself, Mr. Schmier. Schmier, how are you, man?
Hey, Chris, I'm doing fine. How are you?
I am great, man. It's like I said to you right before we started, it's always good when there's a new dose of Destruction hitting my ears, man. It's
all right.
It's one of the, you guys are one of those bands, and I've been a fan pretty much since the beginning. It's one of those bands that I don't even have to look or hear a preview or anything. I know what I'm going to get before I even hear one note. I get myself ready and I get my face ripped off every single time.
Yeah, good to hear that. You know, we're getting older and wiser, but we don't slow down.
Right. No question. And you certainly haven't slowed down here. In fact, this live release is it might be the fastest that you guys have ever played. It's a fantastic collection. And the one thing that does stand out about Born to Thrash to me is that it's a 4-piece instead of a 3-piece this time, and it really seems to have fleshed out the sound a lot. Do you agree?
Yeah. That's the second guitar is such a great addition. You know, that it was one of the reasons why we did this live album. You know, when Corona came, we had this show recorded from this festival in Germany, and Corona came out, and we knew we wouldn't have shows for several months. So we said, hey, if we can't play, let's at least show the fans out there how the band sounds like in 2020 with 2 guitars again, you know. So I think it's a big improvement, of course. I mean, we loved to be a trio, you know, it was cult, it was fun. But with 2 guitars, man, it's just much more ripping. You know, it's metal is made to play with 2 guitars, and Damir, our new guy, is a great player, and he's a perfect addition to the band.
Sure. Well, let's go backwards a little bit to Damir joining the band. What was it that was going on with you guys that made you decide A, to bring back in a second guitarist, and B, to, you know, bring Damir specifically into the band?
I mean, we've been talking about the second player for a while. We've been, you know, Old Drake, the lead player from the band Evile from the UK. Mm-hmm. He played several lead guitars on Destruction releases in the last 10 years, actually. We invited him a couple of times in the studio. We also talked about him being our second guitar player, but yeah, you know, stuff in his life changed. He became a father. He kind of retired for a while from music. And yeah, you know, what was important for us is that we get somebody in the band that is like a friend. It's not somebody new, somebody that has to kind of, you know, work himself into the band, somebody that knows the band. And Damir, he's a good friend of mine. He's the husband of the guitar player from Burning Witches. And I'm the manager of Burning Witches and the producer also. So we've been working together really close in the last years. And I know what kind of guy he is, and that he's a great player. And yeah, you know, it was important to get somebody in the band that is not just a great player, that is also a cool guy that fits into the band. You know, the chemistry is as important as the playing, and you know, that attitude is the main thing. If you want to keep the band together, you got to have the right bunch of guys.
Right, sure. Now, when he joined the band, you know, both in the studio and obviously in the live shows, did you find that you had, even if it was just a show or two, some moments where things didn't feel familiar, where it felt a little uncomfortable as you kind of readjusted to, you know, everything from where people are standing to the actual sound of the music that was being played?
Not really. I think I was a little afraid at the beginning that, you know, the routine that we have as a 3-piece on stage would go away. Because Mike and me, we really know each other. We know how to move, and we know our ways, how to move with each other, you know, to not be in the way of each other. Right. So I was a little afraid at the beginning that the new member would kind of, stumble a bit in between us, But actually, Damir, he's also a very experienced player. He's playing since he's a little kid. So he has a lot of experience, and he kind of fitted in to the band right away. It was a very natural process. How the stage acting worked at the beginning right away, that we found a certain harmony. So it really never felt uncomfortable. It felt right away like he's a part of the band. And that's something you have to achieve so quick. It's not so easy, I think. And he kind of confirmed our decision to get him into the band really quick, I think.
Sure. And obviously the other change, I guess, was that you promoted Randy Black to the full-time drummer instead of being the temporary drummer. Now, Randy's a machine, and I don't think anybody will argue that. That guy is a machine when it comes to playing. For you as a bass player, though, how long did it take you to find that groove or that pocket for the two of you to work together on?
I think that's, when you used to work with a click track, which we've been doing for many years, a drummer like Randy is the perfect addition because he's always on the money. He's never like hanging behind the band. He's always pushing on the click, So for me as a bass player, it was perfect, because he's super reliable. And even if you have maybe a bad sounding stage one day, Randy is there, even when you maybe don't hear the little details sometimes on stage because the venue doesn't sound so good, but he's so reliable and so much on the money. So he was always one of my favorite metal drummers, and I'm glad we have him in the band, of course.
Sure. Do you think that fans understand how precise the bass player and the drummer have to be with each other? Because it really, unless you've done it, and I'm a failed drummer from way back. I was not good at it, which is why now I do interviews. But but I certainly understand, especially in the live setting, how precise you have to be between the bass player and the drummer in order to make the music not sound sloppy. And I don't think people understand just how tight you have to be with the drummer. Do you?
Yeah, I think most people maybe don't, because not everybody is a musician, but people still feel when a band is tight, because to make a band tight, it's like basically we always say in Germany, when things start to move, in the rehearsal room, when the beer bottles start falling off the fridge, then the band is tight. That it's when the bass drums and the bass 16 notes are tight, and then everything starts to move. And I think the fans maybe don't understand exactly what comes together, but I think they feel it also. Especially in thrash metal. Drummer and bassist are a big foundation, a big ground power. That if the drummer and the bass player suck in a thrash band, then the guitar players can be really great, but it's not going to groove good, So it's a super important part. That's why Destruction. We had several drummers because it's a tough job. Not every drummer wants to play this kind of music forever because it's really exhausting. But we always had good drummers in the last 20 years because the drummer is basically the backbone of the band.
Absolutely. Now, Schmier, I as I said before, I love this release, this Born to Thrash. I love the sound of it. I think more than anything, I think I just love the actual recording of it. It just sounds so good. And it's one of those things, especially in the live setting, that a lot of bands fail to capture that live dynamic feel. Who recorded this and mixed it for you? Because they really did a fantastic job with this.
Yeah, we had two really good people involved in recording and mixing, like our former sound guy, Arnie. He's having a recording studio at how do you call it? A portable recording studio, okay. And he's working at the festivals most likely, and he records bands at festivals. And he was at this Partisan festival, and he recorded us, and he knows the band really well. So he delivered a really good signals from the show. And we mixed the album in Switzerland with our producer that we use since many years, and our good friend VO Pulver in the Little Creek studio. And we said right from the beginning that we want to keep the album like rough, and we don't want him to polish the sound so much. And he did a great job. We actually, because we did the album in the Corona, we couldn't even enter Switzerland at that time. We had to stay in Germany because the borders were closed.
Right.
So basically, all we did was mixing the album basically over the internet. Like he sends us the files. We write him some lists back. What to change, like add a little more bass drum. We need a little bit more high end on the cymbals and stuff like this. And then we've been phoning a couple of times back and forth, and he basically mixed the album in his studio alone. And the result is great because he knows us. He's been doing our last studio albums also, and he's an old friend since the 80s. He used to play, he still plays in a band called the Poltergeist.
Okay.
So they are also like veterans from the 80s metal, So it's good if somebody knows you well and understands the spirit of the band also, That's I think the producer is like a fifth band member, If he doesn't understand what the band is all about, then he's not going to make you sound the way you should sound.
Right. Now, I know, and certainly I love the way it sounds. It sounds like you do as well. But at the same time, did you kind of hate doing the production work this way versus, the normal way of getting in and listening and working, hand in hand?
Actually, we do it since many years.
Okay.
Like a little bit similar like this. Basically, we go to the studio, we record the album, and then we do a first rough mix in the studio, and then we go home, and then we let the producer and engineer work on the mix basically, and this way he can focus on the mix, and not everybody is there to disturb him, and we can be at home with fresh ears and and listen to the files he's sending us, and very important is the reference you have at home. Let's say your car stereo, your own stereo, your headphones you use at home, and those are the best reference. So it's actually fantastic when you're not in the studio to mix the album, because at home you have much fresher ears and you get a final result, a final mix. Then you listen to it, you make notes, you send them back, and he changes it. And we work like this since many years. But of course, this time the live album we couldn't attend at all to the studio. Usually I go by sometimes during the mix and I say, hey, how's it going and stuff. I think it's a good tip for any young band. Don't hang in the studio when the engineer is mixing the album, because what happens is the drummer will say, oh, my drums are not loud enough, I need more bass drum. And then the guitarist will say, oh, the guitar is not loud enough, put the guitar louder. And then the singer will say, I can't hear my vocals. And the mix will sound like shit at the end,
Right.
So that's something we learned pretty early, that don't disturb the guy who mixes the album, and you can change everything in the pre-mixes, and just let him do his job.
Right. Well, Schmier, one job you've been doing forever, it seems like, is just creating great releases. You guys still have the fire. You still have a lot of great ideas. And I'll be honest, I thought Born to Perish was probably your best album that you've done pretty much since you came back. I mean, I was looking at the catalog and I was thinking Born to Perish is probably the best release from Destruction since All Hell Breaks Loose. Where do you find not only the ideas, but the energy to keep coming back and to keep it so fresh for yourself, because obviously if you were playing music you were bored with, it wouldn't have this fire and this intensity that you always bring to the music.
Yeah, I think the passion is there. We still love what we do. And I always try to resume every album we do. Sometimes not every album is 100% satisfaction after some time. When you record, it's always great, and it's like a baby, every album. But in the end, after a certain time, you kind of reflect the album, and then you learn from your mistakes also. At least I try to do that every time we do a new album. And I think on the last couple of years, we've been kind of, getting better with the, like, kind of reflecting the songwriting. What can we do better and stuff like this. I think that's why Born to Thrash became the better album, because we kind of wiped out some mistakes that we did in the last years, production-wise and also songwriting-wise, and we came back a little bit more back to the roots, a little bit more back to the basics, and also at the end, you write the songs to be played live, and that's sometimes easy to forget when you're in the studio. When you write, you want to put a lot of ideas in, and then you kind of maybe make the songs a little bit too complicated, and then they don't function so good live anymore. And I think to find that little fine line, between enough technical ability and kind of like a Destruction always had a straight in your face kind of attitude, and that's important.
Do you ever struggle with that? Do you ever find yourself writing stuff that's too complex, and then you figure out that you've got 10 songs that none are going to work?
No, we usually, what we do is usually we record the songs pretty early as demos. And then usually when the song is a failure, you kind of find out quite easily when you record it in the studio that the song is not functioning, and then we usually change it. But we have since a couple of years we've been doing that we record demos of all the songs before we go in the studio to finally record the album. So that kind of prevents a little bit that some stuff is at the end of the day on the album that you might not like, because when you have recorded something, the song becomes much more real. When you play a song in the rehearsal room, it's very difficult to judge it, because you play it at the same time as you kind of, you have emotions involved and stuff. But when you record something and you have a little distance, then you can really tell if it's shit or not.
Right. No, definitely. Now, Schmier, I've always thought that Destruction, at least in my eyes, is a live band first, a studio band second. And I haven't really gotten to see the band that many times. In fact, I've seen you twice. But I've always thought that if you haven't seen Destruction, then you really haven't fully grasped it. Do you, as a band, do you perform that way? Do you think of yourselves as a live band first, and then, the studio stuff is obviously important, but do you think of the live show as more important than, say, the studio recordings?
Yeah, I think, studio recording is fun, but, live is the essence of what we do. Thrash metal is also all about energy and about delivering a certain vibe. And that's why a lot of people came to us before and said, hey, I've never been a big fan, but I saw you live, and then I became a fan. And this music is something you understand much better when you see it live, when you catch the energy. And that's, of course, what you're basically saying, is that thrash and Destruction is a live experience, I mean, as much as I love doing albums, but nothing beats the moment when you're on stage.
Sure. Do you, with the pandemic, we're seeing a lot of bands doing a lot of strange things, whether it's playing in their house, these house concerts or drive-in movie theater shows. I know Doro did a drive-in movie theater.
Horrible. We got those offers too, but we don't do that shit. It doesn't pay tribute to what we do. I think it's a nice try, and I understand people trying hard to go through the pandemic without being bored or broke. But at the end, the most important thing at a live show is the crowd, and when you play in front of cars, there's no atmosphere, and it's not functioning. I compare it to the football games in Germany, the soccer games. They're now those, we call them ghost games. They're games in front of no people. And I'm a huge soccer football fan. I know we call it football in Germany, but you call it soccer. But I'm a huge fan. But I have to say the games are fucking boring. Because it's missing the crowd, and it's the same with live music. When there's no crowd, it's not functioning. And I understand people are doing this, but it's not an option for Destruction. We said that right away. We said, let's see how long this pandemic goes. But at the moment, those streaming shows and home concerts and shit are not an option for us to do, because we want to have real shows again. And that's what we're working on. And that's why we also have our first live show in 2 weeks already in Switzerland. Because we're trying to bring back the live business.
Absolutely. Although I got to say, it'd be a hell of a mosh pit at a drive-in.
Yeah, only one turn, and then it's over.
Exactly. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're definitely getting ready to get out there and play. Has it been difficult to find venues to play now, or?
Yeah, of course. It depends on the countries. Some countries are ahead, like Switzerland. Switzerland has almost no COVID, and they have recovered really fast, and they are ahead of most of countries in Europe. So they were already doing, since 2 weeks, they're doing small shows. Shows are restricted, and there has to be a special, significant security concept for it. But they are doing shows until 300 people. And when this goes well, hopefully in the next weeks, they want to step up to 500 people. And then it's going to be possible to do more and more shows. I think the same stuff is happening in Germany. In August, Germany will start to allow concerts till 500 people. Okay. It's, of course, it's not the biggest step into normal life again, but because for all the bigger bands, they can't play basically, Sure. But for us, it's a great new start, I think with 500 people, the venues, that's something we can totally live with, and it's important that the first steps are made and we learn how to bring this back, I know the big festivals and the big venue shows, it will take time to come back, I guess.
Well, with these shows, and I really have no idea, will they make people sit in chairs, or will there be just an open pit? Will they be allowed to mosh? What will happen?
I don't know yet. The concept is that the venues have maximum capacity of 40% of the people they normally. So the place we play in Switzerland is a really big venue that holds normally like about 1,200 people, and for our show they only let in 300. So there's enough space for everybody to be safe. And I don't know what's going to happen if there's a mosh pit and stuff. We will have to see. But at the end, it's going to be a new experience. But there's of course there's a security concept that has to be confirmed by the government from every club. So I think it's tough for the small clubs, because when you have like a small venue with 300 people, that means you can maybe only let like 80, 90 people into the place, So that's going to be tough to do shows, because with 80, 90 people, it's almost impossible to finance a concert,
right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's gonna be a new world, I guess. That's what we're in.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of new things, and we have to adapt and see. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we're going to find a way to go through this.
I'm with you. Well, Schmier, the new release, once again, for people that are not at the show, that are not one of those 300, they can catch you with Born to Thrash live in Germany. It is the latest from Destruction. And Schmier, why don't you go ahead and pick a song from Born to Thrash to wrap this interview up with? Maybe tell us a quick story about it.
Yeah, I think my favorite song to play live has always been, and it's still, Curse the Gods, because I think the song and its message is such a typical Destruction thrasher, with the roller coaster in speed and, also the vocals and the high-pitched screams. I think Curse the Gods is one of the ultimate Destruction songs, will always be. And after all those years, I still love to play it live.
Awesome. Well, let's check it out right now. It's Curse the Gods. It is Destruction right here on your Classic Metal Show.